Thank you so much, Amaya. And all right. Hi, everyone. My name's Amanda Kibler. I'm the program chair for our clinically based elementary education pathway at Oregon State University. And it's an undergraduate bachelor's and a graduate master's program. So it's a real pleasure to be here with you. I want to thank Jason for connecting us to this network. It's such an amazing opportunity. And before we dive in, I wanted to have my colleagues who are joining me today, Justin and Nell, just really quickly, if you could unmute and say hello, that would be great.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Justin Roach. I'm the MAT program lead at Oregon State University. Great to be here.
Hi, everybody. I'm Nell O'Malley, and I'm leading the effort to launch our undergraduate pathway, the Bachelor of Science in Clinically Based Education.
Thank you so much. And Justin and I will need to step out partway through this meeting. Nell will be here the whole time so that as you do have follow-up questions, she'll be here to answer them. We have several partners. We're bringing some of our district partners to future meetings. So it's just the three of us today, but we can give you the overview of our program. Go ahead, next slide. All right, so we are two of multiple teacher ed pathways in our College of Education, both graduate and undergraduate. And we are based in the main campus in Corvallis, but we serve students all across the state of Oregon using a hybrid instructional model that we'll talk about in a little bit. We specifically are an elementary education pathway, so we are preparing students they receive the degree, of course, and the license for teaching in K-5 settings. Currently, we have 42 students in our 2-year master's program, and as Nell mentioned, we are launching our new undergraduate program, and it will begin this fall, and it's a 2-year junior and senior year, so students will be transferring in from community colleges into our undergraduate program. Next slide. All right, so 3 key program goals that we have. The first is to diversify the teacher workforce. And we're doing this through targeted recruitment and careful retention. So both, of course, are quite important, of BIPOC and or bilingual teacher candidates. And we also do this recruitment, this retention through really high quality programming to really produce teachers who are diversifying the teacher workforce and who are the best in our workforce. Our second key program goal in the MAT, we provide pathways within districts. So our partnerships with districts focus on preparing current district employees, among others. There are a few variations, some local variations, but we really do focus on those current employees and getting them with a graduate degree and licensure. And then for our bachelor's, this is a pathway that's really from community colleges, and these are local pathways. So this, because we have a hybrid structure, we are able to help current community college students transfer into the university and then apprentice in local school districts while they're earning their degree. Next slide, please. All right, so here's a timeline of our program, more or less. So there were several instantiations of an MAT over time, but the current version began in 2016. That was the first year of our current MAT program, and it was established with Beaverton School District, which is in the larger Portland, Oregon metropolitan area, and it was called Teach for Beaverton. In 2018, we added a new district cohort. This was the Portland Public Schools dual language teacher residency program, and particularly their elementary side of that program. They joined, so we had basically a 2-district partnership with our MAT. And as you can see, this has been a really busy year because you get to 2020, 2021, there's a lot listed. So we are developing our new undergraduate program, and we have an ESOL and dual language focus. So our students receive their undergraduate degree, they have the licensure, and then they graduate with included either an ESOL endorsement or a dual language certification offered by the state. This year we have added new districts to our MAT, so those are current students who are now from multiple districts. And we also received, so Oregon Department of Ed put out a competitive grant competition for GYOs, and we did receive 1 grant as the PI, and then we're participating in another grant. And these are both focused on BIPOC and bilingual teacher candidates, diverse teacher candidates, and the pathways. And we do have large recruitment efforts underway for both our master's and our bachelor's in terms of multiple district and other school institution partners. And in fall 2023, we're hoping to have our full cohorts established and these new partnerships we're recruiting right now firmly established. So we're looking forward to that in our timeline. Next slide, please. All right, so this gives you the sense of the many districts we are working with and other institutions. So you'll see the master's, the graduate program, and the undergraduate program, and then in the middle are some that are shared by our various programs. So we have some overlap, but not complete overlap in our partnership. And that really reflects the different priorities and needs that different districts or institutions have. Underlined, you'll see our current partnerships. So Beaverton and Portland and Hillsborough for our MAT, and then the bachelor's having North Wasco, Hood River School District, and Columbia Gorge Community College. But then we have a number of other partners who we are in the process of joining us, likely to have students begin in the fall. And that includes an ESD, so that's an educational service district as well. And that's a conglomeration of, I believe, 10 different districts. So we have several partners we're working with at the same time. Next slide, please. All right, so a few key program design features, and I'm interested to see how they overlap with some of yours. Ours is an explicitly clinically based teacher preparation. That's really how we try to identify and differentiate our program within the GYO space. And that includes ongoing and intensive classroom experiences at being K-5 classrooms as students are in our program and throughout the program. Also intensive support from carefully selected and highly trained mentors and supervisors who are really scaffolding that experience for students. We do a lot of work to really tie our coursework to classroom practice. So everything from curriculum design to having co-teachers who are actually practitioners in our district schools. And we also, for the MAT, because they have an undergraduate degree, they do often, we integrate experiences with either part or full-time work in schools and in classrooms as teachers. Our next key design is the district partnership itself. So we feature extensive participation by our district in building leadership in a lot of our key decision-making points and in the direction of our partnership. And at the districts also provide some financial commitments to support mentoring. And of course, this looks a bit different in different partnerships, but there is that commitment of financial support specifically for our clinical teachers and their support of our students. And then we have, as I mentioned, a flexible online hybrid model. So our courses are offered online with selected face-to-face components in some of the courses. So some are fully online, some are a mixture of the face-to-face and the online. And the scheduling and the design of the whole program is really made for non-traditional teacher candidates who have work week experiences, and these are responsibilities. And those may be in schools or out of schools, but it really helps us diversify who we can serve through our program. Next slide, please. All right, so a few of the key support services that we offer. We do have a cohort model, so students go through the program together, along with district support, which we help coordinate, but they do receive quite a bit of district support and attention. Some tuition support assistance, some from the district, some from the university, as much as we can. We have highly trained mentors and supervisors. And we do have some for licensure related fees. We have a combination of university and some district partner support to really help students with that as just one of those barriers to entry into the profession. For our MAT, as a graduate program, it has a fairly limited number of prerequisites, as reducing a barrier for entry. And then for the bachelor's program, we are working very extensively with our community college advisors to really facilitate that transition from community college to the university, because that's such a key point that can be a barrier if not done well. Next slide, please. All right. So key strengths and challenges, a few that we thought of. So some strengths, we do have flexibility that's provided by both the online nature of our coursework and our ability to personalize partnerships with districts. Often districts may have a limited number of teacher candidates who they want to have participate, but they're very eager to participate. And so because we're able to work with multiple districts and really work around some of their needs within the clinically based model, we do have a lot of interest from our districts and our community colleges. And we also have sought after graduates. Now that we have been around for 4+ years, our graduates are in districts in the community, and districts are noticing that. Some challenges, particularly as we are recruiting and seeking to retain our BIPOC and bilingual mentors, we're finding it challenging. We work closely with districts, but it is challenging to locate BIPOC and bilingual mentors for our students and supervisors as well. And we also have found, especially this year, but it was even before, but especially right now, so much is going on in districts, and there are so many priorities. And so I think we always are having to balance that challenge of the investment of time and resources that GYOs demand, and really being able to work with districts with the time and resources they can offer to make the best of the situation and the strongest program that we can. Next slide. And yeah, we thank you for your time. Looking forward to hearing from others.
Thank you so much, Amanda. That was great. Next, we are going to hear from the Transition to Teaching program out of Eastern Washington University.
Hi, everybody. My name is Susie Henning. I'm actually here solo to represent the Transition to Teaching program. Eastern Washington University is located on this map all the way over on the eastern side in Spokane County. We are an undergraduate degree program as well as a teacher certificate only program. And we have over 40 partners, district partners, and we have a partner in the ESD that's kind of in the center of the state. If you kind of look at that block of blue in the center, there's one ESD that represents all of those counties. They are a partner in our GYO, as well as the community college in Big Bend. We are a recipient of a state competitive grant, a block grant. And so you'll see those colors on the map represent where our candidates come from, either participating as a part of the block grant or as what we call a self-pay option. We are located in Cheney, but as you can see, we really stretch across the state, and we primarily focus on meeting the needs of rural communities and counties. Next slide, please. So our program specifically was developed first with 5 different school districts in the center of the state to meet some of the needs that they were struggling with for teachers. And in particular, they were looking for elementary education and special education. And that's also true for us more on the east side of the state as well. And so we provide a certificate in elementary ed, which in our state is a K-8 certificate, as well as endorsements in special education, ELL, and this year we added bilingual education. And so we are a cohort model. We have cohorts based on admit year as well as location. So we have kind of 3 different locations within the state where students come to meet when we are meeting for face-to-face coursework. And of course, the primary need here is to have qualified teachers in the field, and especially to diversify the educator workforce in Washington state. So right now across our different cohorts, we have about 60 to 70 candidates enrolled. We are we're just starting our 4th year. Next slide. So in our state, there are 4 different routes that a candidate can choose to become certified. And route 1 is really the route that includes an undergraduate degree, and the other 3 routes are for those who might be choosing a cert-only path, depending on how they come to us with what experiences they have. What similarly to the presentation we heard from Oregon State, we have a hybrid delivery, and we do have, the information that came out of our focus group meetings with those original 5 districts is that in these rural communities where there's onesies and twosies for candidates coming from different school districts, it's really important that they create support networks for each other and that they have people they can talk to that are experiencing similar things as they become teachers. And so our districts felt very strongly that we needed to have face-to-face components to the meetings and needed to make sure that we had some synchronous opportunities for candidates. And so in a non-COVID time, we do have an intensive summer academy where we come together for 2 full weeks of face-to-face interaction. And then there are 4 weeks in addition to that where they're doing online coursework. There is some synchronous meeting as well as asynchronous expectations to that online coursework. And what we have found in our first 3 graduating cohorts is that they are a tight group. And that's really was the intention of the design. And it starts from the summer academy and moves forward in the program. We are a competency-based program, which means that every single candidate who comes into the program has something called a teacher development plan, which is an individualized plan looking at what their past experiences are, what competencies in teaching they may have already been able to establish and meet from their past experiences, especially as a paraeducator. And then there is an individualized plan for them going forward. And so there's a lot of flexibility in our program. And ultimately, each candidate submits an evidentiary portfolio that shows how they have met the requirements for a state certification to teach. And there's there's a secondary portfolio if they choose to add on an endorsement, so an ELL or SPED, so on and so forth. It is clinically based program. Our coursework and our fieldwork is tied together. Candidates come into the coursework talking about problems of practice, things that have happened since the last meeting. We meet once a month in a Friday afternoon, Saturday model. And our supervisors come from the ESD or from the university, and they oftentimes will join us for those sessions to be able to talk about patterns that are happening in the field. Next slide, please. So we do offer financial support through that block grant that I mentioned. And so we do have many students, over 20 students, who are receiving almost all of the tuition costs covered by that grant. And then the school districts that are supporting those candidates also receive a little bit of funding to help assist with the cost of preparing that candidate. If the candidate is not part of the grant, then there is a self-pay option, and we coordinate with the district, as many of you do, right, to figure out how the needs will be met for the candidate as they go through the program. There's also, we actually have a very heavy advising support from the very beginning. Because we meet once a month, candidates step out for advising during those meetings. And we have a coordinator and a director who spends quite a bit of time actually kind of connecting with every single student on a regular basis. Next slide, please. So some of the strengths of our program really are flexibility, that we're able to use the experiences of candidates prior to coming into the program toward meeting the competencies that they have to receive a certificate. Also, that teacher development plan that's individualized is a great way to be flexible for candidates. Our partnerships are very strong. We meet with our, there's over 40 partners, but we come together at least once a quarter for meetings. And we started out with that original 5, and it's grown so quickly from 5 to over 40. And what we found too is that our partners are communicating with each other around GYO needs now, independent of the university facilitating those. And so it's really the support networks that are being created are really exciting to see in these districts that are pretty rural and spread out. Challenges, of course, are the same as some of the strengths, right? We have so many partners that communicating expectations, especially when they're individualized by candidate, it's quite daunting, making sure that candidates are receiving what they need and that districts know what they need to do, mentors know, supervisors know. The communication is ongoing and continuous. And then, of course, making those connections and creating those networks in a time when we are all kind of stuck to our digital devices has been a struggle that we are working through. So that is our program, Transition to Teaching. Thanks so much. I look forward to hearing about each of yours.
Thank you, Susie. Next, we are going to hear.
Hello, I'm Jeff Leffler with Mississippi State University's Meridian campus, and I'm going to tell you about our Professional Advancement Network for teacher assistants. And unlike some of you, we did not come from the bilingual education kind of perspective. We found ourselves in the context of being a branch campus of a major university in our state that had declining enrollment in our student population over a number of years. I joined the Meridian campus in 2016, and some of my colleagues had begun some work to look at how we could address this. At the same time, the state was experiencing a critical shortage of teachers. Particularly in our area in Meridian, Mississippi, we were designated as one of the acute shortage areas for certified teachers. The Meridian Public School District, which is in our city, had a great need for teachers, as did several other districts right around us in that area. Just to kind of put it into perspective statewide, a number of years ago, the licensure office would have about 6,000 applications for licenses, and that had declined to around 600 some odd applications. So a number of factors contributing to that, low pay level compared to other states in the region. There also had been some legislation that had been passed that was associated with this third grade reading gate legislation that they did, where they really kind of unintentionally created some barriers for people getting into teacher education programs, some testing related things and that kind of thing. And so that had also contributed to this decline in enrollment in our program. Another big factor that we were up against is that our main campus had started a completely online program in elementary education. So the same program that we were offering, students could do completely online. In fact, my mother went back to school late in life and actually did the completely online program with Mississippi State. And when I started working on the Meridian campus in 2016, oftentimes when I'd have somebody call and inquire about our program, we would go through and talk about all of it. And at the very end of the conversation, they'd say, and I want to do it completely online. And so I'd end up having to refer them to the other program. So all that to say, we were in this context of looking, how can we meet the need in our local community? How can we address the need that we have? And so we, as I said, some colleagues had begun this process. And when I came on, I took the leadership of trying to build this PANTA initiative. If you can go to the next slide. So what is PANTA? Essentially, all we did is we took the teacher education program we already had in elementary ed, which is a bachelor's level preparation, and just thought about all the reasons why teacher assistants couldn't access the program. Now, why teacher assistants? We had a theory that if we could take these individuals who were already working in classrooms, that already had multiple years of experience working in the classroom, and help them to become certified teachers, they were more likely to stick with their school districts, to stay in the profession, and help us to meet that void we had in terms of certified teachers. And so a big problem we had is that our elementary ed program was very much that traditional program. You had to come to classes during the day, you had field experiences that happened during the day. And so there was no possibility of being a full-time teacher assistant and having access to the classes. And so we began looking at how could we offer the classes in a different format. A colleague in our arts and sciences division had done a little pilot investigation of doing what he was calling synced hybrids. And essentially what that was is you would have two classes that most students took at the same time that were scheduled in the same time slot on a late afternoon or evening, and they would meet live every other week and alternate their live and asynchronous online meetings with one another. So we in each of our blocks had about 4 primary classes that the students took each semester. And so we did that same thing. We carved out a 4 o'clock to 6:30 time slot and then a 6:45 to 9:15 time slot so that we could stack 12 hours of coursework in one evening per week. So that another layer that this did for the teacher assistants is they only had to commit one evening per week of their lives to live class meetings. And then of course, because so much of it was asynchronous online work, they could do the rest of that, when they had time to carve that out. The other thing that we did is that we decided to value the experiences that they already had in the classroom and leverage those experiences as much as possible for all of the field experience work that was associated with the classes. Our teacher ed program begins at the junior year, and this is an important context too. We're a transfer campus, so we have 4 community colleges that we have strong partnerships with that all of our students come from. They're at the community college freshman and sophomore year, and then they join us as juniors and seniors. And so in our early block, they were doing about 30 hours of field experience. What we do for our Panta students is we don't count the hours. We just say, here's the assignments that need to be done. And as much as possible, we allow them to do those assignments in the actual classroom that they're already working in. If you could go to the next slide. Fortunately, we had discovered that our state legislature a number of years ago had embedded in the code permission for a teacher assistant to be paid while completing their student teaching internship. So this was another key factor to our design, is that we allowed these teacher assistants to maintain that full-time employment all the way through the teaching internship. Now, one thing that we have as a policy at Mississippi State is that when you're doing your internship, you can't do that under the supervision of the person you've been working with, for a number of years. And so we work with principals to have them trade places with another teacher assistant during the internship so that they have a new supervisor during that time. The one caveat to that is that we always honor the request of principals. If a principal says, this is really messing me up, I need to keep them where they were, we always allow them to remain in that spot. If you could go to the next slide. And so we began doing some recruiting. Our first cohort began in the summer of 2017. And we only had 7 at that point. Our university requires 10 students for a class to make, but because this was a new initiative, they allowed us to go ahead and kind of start short of the full complement of what we needed. Another key component to this, as I mentioned before, we're a transfer campus. We have advisors that work on each of those community college campuses and in a center on our campus. And those advisors began seeking out and working with students at the freshman and sophomore level to make sure that they were getting the correct combination of prerequisite classes so that when they got to us, they could hit the ground running with the teacher education program. And like I said before, it's the same program that our students, our typical students on our campus and our students on our main campus complete. But we get the, a lot of people call us the fast track, and it's not that it's any faster to get through. It's just that we provide a high level of support to make sure that students are taking the classes that count and get through, to where they need to get to in the program. So as I said, 7 started in the summer of 2017. In 2018, we added an additional 18 in that spring semester. And that was another important thing for us. In years past, we would have a new cohort of elementary ed students start each fall and spring. And because of declining campus enrollment, we had stopped having an intake of new students in the spring. And so that was also problematic because if somebody showed up ready to go in the spring, we would either have to have them wait till the fall, or send them to our online program or the main campus. So we had another 18 start that spring, another 13 started the following spring, another 13 spring 2020. With COVID, our state legislature, not our state legislature, our Mississippi Department of Education provided a waiver for the test scores required to get into teacher education programs. And that was a major barrier that we had in our state. My own father, I mentioned my mother went to school late. My dad did too. He's now an art teacher. He struggled with getting that you had to have either a 21 on the ACT or these passing scores on the praxis core. And my dad had a 20 on the ACT, and he kept taking it and taking it and taking it. And ultimately, he made a perfect score in the English part of the ACT to compensate for his low score in the math part of the ACT, and finally got the 21 so that he could get in. But we had many individuals kind of in that same boat. And so with COVID, kind of silver lining, we had all these people that were able to finally get in. They did not have that barrier. And where we typically started a group in the spring, we actually started 33 new Panta students in the fall of 2020. And even with starting that many new students in the fall of 2020, we were still able to enroll a cohort in the spring of 2021 of 13. So big explosion of growth towards this as we've been in COVID. There's been some other things that have kind of come through this. As I said before, we're a transfer campus. We have undergrad programs. We also have graduate programs. In 2016, when I joined our campus, we had declined to 400 students on our campus altogether. And that was in 3 divisions. Currently, the Division of Education has more students in it than our entire campus did in 2016. We've had growth in our graduate programs, in our regular elementary ed program, all at the same time. One kind of big success that I'm proud of is that initial group of 7 Panta students that started with us in the summer of 2017. 5 of them are getting ready to finish their master's degree in elementary education this summer. So again, all we did was create an opportunity, got rid of all the excuses for why these people couldn't do this so that they could do it. We've had a 100% completion rate. We've also had a 100% job placement when they finish. And most, as I said before, of these individuals are going to work in that district that they were already working in. Next slide. So the big things, blended learning. And I didn't mention this before, in addition to those synced hybrid classes, we also began providing an opportunity for students to be in the live classroom or to log in via WebEx. We had a number of school districts that getting to class by 4 o'clock was not possible because of the drive. And so those individuals had the opportunity to choose to log in instead. This became very beneficial to us when the world changed last year with COVID, because all of our instructors in our elementary program were used to using web tools in their classes. So we just kind of easily transferred over to a synchronous online model while we're getting through all of this. Again, I mentioned the later class times and then the modified field experiences. Next slide. And so this just gives you an idea. By that fall, we're trying to finish up any of those lower level classes that they didn't have before. Typically an early block would begin in the spring. I mentioned earlier, we went ahead and started a group in the fall because we had a group that were able to start. We do the middle block. That's where we do our middle grades education, middle literacy, all those kinds of classes over the summer and connect with the summer program for field experiences, because many of our teacher assistants are working in those lower grade levels. And so doing middle level field experiences over the summer makes that more accessible. We do a senior teaching methods block in the fall, then internship and graduation. So that's how that works. And next slide. If anybody has questions, just reach out to me in the chat and I'll be happy to answer those. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Jeff. Now we're going to move on and hear from our friends in Hawaii.
Aloha mai kako. My name is Sonoy Marfa. I'm the Chief Program Officer at the Institute for Native Pacific Education and Culture, also known as INPEACE. And today we'll be talking to you about our Kalama program. Joining me today, I have the program director. So if I can give her a sec to kind of introduce herself. Angela, if you jump on real quick.
Aloha, my name is Angela Happy Cruz. Mahalo for having us share the work that we're doing and joining you all in moving our communities forward.
And so like was mentioned, we come from the state of our organization is a Native Hawaiian nonprofit organization. So we are really different than some of the folks that we've heard from already. We are located on the island of Oahu, on the west side of the island, and we really focus in on kind of 3 focus areas. So early learning and school readiness, family economic capacity building, and educational equity and teacher development. And so Kalama program is just one program of 8 programs that we have within our nonprofit organization. Next slide, please. And so if you look at this map of Oahu, where our main offices are located, we are on the west side of the island on a coastline, 20-mile coastline called Waianae. And our program was started 25 years ago. And so we had our founders of our organization who back then were professors at the university doing some work here in Waianae as well as our Ko'olau side, and really wanted to increase the number of teachers that were homegrown teachers that were from the coast. And so in their quest to do that, they created the program to encourage folks from the coast to become teachers. At that time, their program looked like, their program was cohort style. They took individuals and moved them through the pipeline. As we morph 25 years later, here we are, we do more of an individualized service for our students, reach them where they're at in whatever pathway they're looking to kind of go after their journey that they're trying to do. And we help them with all of the wraparound services that we provide that we'll be sharing. Next slide, please. And so, like I shared, we're a Native Hawaiian nonprofit organization, grassroots, and in our program, partnering and partnerships and relationships is the key to being successful. And so these are some of the partners that we partner with, and we have many different kind of initiatives that we do. And so when we're doing our work in community, and because we kind of have an ear to the ground, I'm a graduate of one of the schools here on the coast. Angela raises her family on the coast as well as I. And so we kind of find out what our teachers are needing. And when we know what they're needing beyond what we see in the mainstream, we try to provide those services, and we use these partners to make it happen. And so Angela will share a little bit about, I wanted to highlight our EA pilot program that came about after we found out that the state, they did a research study. They did a study and it said that, EAs, educational assistants, they don't want to be teachers. They just want to kind of be the assistants in the classrooms. And in our work, in our community, we found that to be untrue. And so we worked with some of these partners listed to actually create an EA pilot program. And so I'll have Angela talk a little bit about that. Next slide. Our big picture when we're thinking about our work and the partnering and the relationships that we hold on to is that we want to increase the number of highly qualified, culturally grounded teachers and professionals in the field of education. And so in the 25 years that we've been able to run our program, we've graduated upwards of 347 individuals with degrees in with a degree in an associate's degree, a bachelor's degree, master's degrees, certifications when we were thinking about early childhood education, which is one of our kind of key buckets. Certified child development certificate is kind of the key certificate to getting into ECE. When we think about what some of our teachers are struggling with, it's what Jeffrey mentioned about praxis. And so we hone in on those types of things so that folks can get through those pathways. And so like I said, we've been able to help over 345 individuals graduate with degrees. And of those, 157 continue to work here on our coastline where we are trying to grow our own teachers and continue to have the pipeline of teachers stay here on the coast. Next slide.
Aloha, mahalo, Sonoy. And so to piggyback off of what she has shared, this photo is of our National Board Certificate earners. Through the many partnerships that our leadership has been able to create, the Hawaii Teacher Standards Board reached out to us at our education assistant partnership meeting that we have monthly and said, I've been trying to make a connection and bring the NBC prep programs to a classroom, to host it at one of our rural school communities. So earlier on, Sonoy shared the geographic, the picture of our island. We are sometimes 2 hours away, just given traffic. If it's a bad traffic day, we're 2 hours away from hitting town. And so most of the access and resources are often centralized. And so Tracy Adika said, can we figure something out? And we reached out to one of our administrators and we were able to provide NBC wide prep supports at 2 of our schools on the coast. So the HTSB liaison came out and provided those prep. We supported through recruitment. So we worked closely with our administrators, and as Sonoy said, the Coconut Wireless is still really, really strong. We put out the call and shared, these are the different opportunities. Let's help to increase the number of NBC highly effective teachers. And we're happy to say that in 2019, 10% of those statewide were from our Waianae coast. So we're increasing the number of highly effective, hoping to impact the retention efforts. and we want to bring the two spectrums of participants to the middle. So we have our education assistants, and through the hard work of our leadership, we did surveys that said, would you like to do this? Do you want more than the education assistant role? And found that an overwhelming number of our participants, like you have all shared, just were experiencing the many barriers. And so in growing together with our institutional partners, namely Leeward Community College, we were able to create the Non-Equity Education Assistant pilot program. We have 10 students, 10 out of 30 initially started in 2017, 2018, that will begin their bachelor leg of the program. So they've reached their SPED cert, now they're moving on to their bachelor's in special education in partnership with LCC and Chaminade University. And that was done through a lot of bridge building. Instructors came out to the classroom in Nanakuli. We staffed the study sessions. We communicated to the institutional partners what the academic challenges were. And in doing that, we're helping to design what we hope to be able to provide in future cohorts. And so this was a cohort model pilot, and we're hoping to continue to develop that. Next slide, please. So the design of our program was really, as Sonoy said, it's informed by our community. For a long time, we did not have, and I'm 4 years into working in this specific program, we didn't have a close-knit relationship with the educational institutional partners, and we've really worked on becoming like Ohana. So what's been awesome is that relationship building. We support in recruiting for Leeward Community College, where the majority of our students are at, and UH West Oahu. We have 5 students that are at UH Manoa as part of 2 new cohort programs through UH Manoa, and we're really excited about that. They do individual development action planning. So it really identifies and maps out from EA to master level teacher, what is your journey? And our coaches will support and work through helping students navigate what those barriers are and connect with the academic and college advising to make sure that one, they're not taking credits that aren't going to transfer over. And so with UH Manoa, this is the first cohort that has moved on since I started. That was an issue. And so now we're able to kind of identify and flag those things. Ongoing support and professional development. The first cohort that started 25 years ago, one is a principal at Waianae Elementary School, and another educator is moving into administrative roles. So it's really exciting to see that take place and move forward. We are branching out, looking at the opportunities for growth. One of the challenges presented by COVID, not presented, but really magnified by COVID, is the retention piece. Next slide, please. With everybody having to manage the financial challenges, our state has proposed slashing 1,500 teaching positions by next year. So many of our students were calling us and saying, this isn't viable. What am I going to do? Many of our teachers, our educators are EA. So we are really looking at how do we continue to target and provide intensive support to those EAs that are in school, working closely with our institutional partners to provide that wraparound support, and then with our community partners providing professional development that nurtures those on the field in the classroom teachers. So retention supports, looking at how we can provide a collaborative way to nurture their passion and to also attack burnout. So there's a lot of burnout conversation. And so that's where we're at now and how we're continuing to kind of develop and evolve, meeting the challenges. We met with West Oahu and LCC to talk about the future of teaching. how do we prevent students from panicking and dropping out? And so we similarly have seen a decrease in enrollment. And so we're working individually with students to look at housing. There are housing issues. Some of them just have to work full time. And so identifying those challenges, many that Jeffrey had mentioned, the praxis, as well as one of our institutional partners requires that you have to work full time. Well, you have to do your field site full time. So she would have to resign from her actual EA position. And so how do we make that? How do we meet all the needs of our students and our communities? And then lastly, I wanted to share that in partnership, it took effect this spring 2021. We moved our EAs that completed the AST program at LCC into a TA1 teaching salary. So they're able to see as they move up in educational attainment, even if it's just an AST, which many of my students said, it's just an AST, I'm not going to get anything. So we were able to say, no, it's not just an AST, it's one step closer, you're moving up your salary scale. And so that took effect spring 2021. These are the supports we provide: a small tuition assistance, coaching, mentoring, financial education, and really mentioned earlier, the English language learner. Our community, there's a lot of cultural disconnect between the teachers that come through and the students in the community. And so this is a huge component to why our program has been as successful as it's been, working with our partners and community. And so we're excited to share all of that and to learn. There's a lot of learning from everybody that shared before me. Next slide. So I went through, as I was talking, some of the growing opportunities. We are excited to be building and strengthening in our relationships with the higher institutional partners, specifically the non-Akuli pilot program. Now we're calling the education assistance to teacher pathway. We were just notified yesterday that there's a lot of money to spend down for a special education certificate. So we're going to be doing targeted outreach to all of our teachers in the classroom and share with them that the state will pay for the 4 certificates, and this will equate to a salary scale incentive. So those are the targeted outreach opportunities that we have and we continue to build upon. Many of our students, as Sonoy said, we meet them where they're at. A lot of our students are financially challenged. A lot of our students are non-traditional, so getting used to, including myself, all of the tech savviness and accessing and engaging and relearning how to engage with Nearpod and the many other tech platforms. So learning together is where we're at. And then resourcefulness, definitely a strength. We're looking to collaborate with philanthropists and foundations, so educational scholarship funders that are looking to see their legacy continue. We've been partnering with and hoping to meet that financial challenge. And then, of course, as everybody is experiencing the funding cuts, so we're looking innovatively at how we can tackle that and make the most with what we have. And that's something that I think Indigenous and rural communities are very good at. And so retention, we're continuing to hit at retention. Right now we have 93 students. That's across the spectrum. We have 80 that are specifically retention. So those are folks that have their bachelor's and master's, and we're looking at how we can continue to provide support to them as they move into their teaching roles and continue on. And then just addressing the complex COVID-19 challenges that students have shared have impacted their ability to continue on. They're pausing in their academic program, and in that time, we are working with them to maximize scholarships. And a lot of folks just didn't do scholarships. And so we were doing a really intense effort working with folks to access financial resources through those avenues. And that is all that we have to share. We thank you, Mahalo, for allowing us to talk and to share.
Thank you, Sonoy and Angela. So next we have Grow Your Own Illinois, and that'll be our last presentation before our 10-minute break.
Thank you for having us. It's good to see everyone. My name is Liza Pappas. I'm the current executive director of Grow Your Own Illinois. We were incorporated in 2006. We started with 2 community-based organizations in Chicago as a collaboration between school districts, community organizations, and higher education institutions. In the last year, we became statewide grant administrator for Illinois. We currently have 5 GYO consortia and 180 candidates. Today, we're represented by Ken Snyder, who's our regional strategist for our statewide team, Linda Wilson, our coordinator in Peoria, who's also a Grow Your Own graduate, and Brian Reed, who is a coordinator at Eastern Illinois University. And I'll turn it over to our team.
Great, thanks, Liza. So as Liza said, I work for Grow Your Own Illinois. My name is Ken Snyder. So we're a statewide network of Grow Your Own programs. And the way we're gonna do this, I'm gonna take a few minutes to talk a little bit about the broad strokes statewide and our origins. And then Linda, who's the director of the Peoria program for Grow Your Own, is gonna talk a little bit about Peoria, and Brian is going to talk about his program at Eastern Illinois University. So as Liza said, we were founded, incorporated in 2006, founded by community organizations who mostly represented low-income and working-class neighborhoods in Chicago, African-American and Latino-based organizations who were really responding to a disconnect between the cultural competencies of their teachers and the experiences of their students. So I think one way that Grow Your Own Illinois differs from some of the other programs that we've heard is that it's not specifically oriented towards paraprofessionals, and was originally oriented towards actually teacher or parents and community leaders and having them become teachers. So the second thing is that it's really focused on community competency and making sure that teachers come from the communities and into those schools. So one of the features that we have is a real heavy emphasis on culturally responsive pre-service learning, which is specifically around the issues that making sure teachers are have some chance to understand and develop their understanding of issues that their students are going to be facing in the classrooms, but then also that they have an ideology around teaching that's not just, that is, they understand that these schools are valuable community institutions and they believe in their students and schools. And so even though they're in a hard to staff school, that they're not kind of replicating that pattern of the deficit mindset that some people bring into our public schools. So, and then finally, we have an explicit diversity or mandate around increasing our racial diversity in the teacher pool in Illinois. So you can go on to the next slide, please. So just kind of some of the broad strokes overview of Grow Your Own Illinois. So we've got 5 locations around the state. As you can see on the map, they represent literally the very southern tip of Illinois to the very northern tip. So there's a lot of variability in terms of the programs and in terms of the students that they're serving. We are enshrined in the Illinois state law, which both creates a mandate for our program and a specific budget every year for our program, which then Grow Your Own Illinois takes and administers a competitive grant program for consortia around the state. So each of those 5 locations, or 4 of those 5 locations actually, are independent programs that are applying for funding through Grow Your Own Illinois, which, as Liza mentioned, we took a big step forward in the program a year ago, which is that the Grow Your Own Illinois took over administration of the statewide program from the state Illinois Board of Higher Education, which gives us a couple of advantages. One is that whereas IBHE was focused on like literally dozens and scores of programs around the state, we're solely focused on administering the Grow Your Own programs in the state of Illinois. And then second is the advocates who helped create the program. We really invested in both making sure the programs succeed, but then also in our growth. So a couple other common features around the program. So most of our participants in Grow Your Own Illinois throughout the state are paraprofessionals now, although we do have, in some places, especially in the Chicago program, community leaders and parents who are seeking to become teachers. And then as part of a change in state law recently, we're now able to accept students who are currently in the College of Education, where we're really functioning as a program to keep them in the pipeline. So, trying to preserve diversity of the pipeline by keeping students in it who might be vulnerable to falling out of the pipeline. And then, so before I hand this over to Brian to talk about EIU, I just want to frame this up by saying there are basically two program models that we have in Illinois. So one is a university-led program, which Brian is going to talk about in a second. And then the other is a community-based program, which is led by basically community organizations. And so no matter which model that people are in, they're governed by the same set of state rules and state law. And one of those is that they have to have, each consortium has to have a university partner, a school district partner, and a community organization that's its partner. So, and then beyond that, there's, like I said, a lot of variability. So Brian, if you want to talk a little bit about the EIU program, and you can move on to the next slide.
Hi, my name is Brian Reed. I'm the director of the Rural School Initiative here at Eastern Illinois University. We came into this a little bit later than some others. In Illinois, we went through a huge budget cut 5 or 6 years ago. We had to cut about 300 staff. We lost enrollment. There are a whole bunch of issues. Any of you familiar with Illinois? And so it came that we were not producing very many teachers. The rural communities that surround us did not have access to a lot of teachers. So we've been working to do that. We joined GYO 3 years ago with some planning. Our program is academically based. We develop cohorts. We identify paraprofessionals in rural communities, try to cluster them together, and then create cohorts in those different areas. We currently have 2 cohorts, and they're primarily in district offices and our partners. We have elementary and special ed. We have 1 accelerated program for post-baccalaureate students in secondary education. And we're starting 2 new cohorts. We've expanded a little bit this year into 2 more counties. We have a lot of partners, which is probably one of our strengths and one of our weaknesses. We have the College of Education, as many of you have mentioned. We have 5 regional offices of education who represent 20 counties in Illinois. We have 82 school districts. And the way we organize that is each region has representatives who come to our quarterly meetings and then report back. We also have other nonprofit groups. The Rural School Collaborative, which some of you in rural communities may have heard of before, has helped us develop a Rural Teacher Corps that has become kind of the core of our long-term strategy. We have started 10 high school groups, future teachers. We have started working with community colleges this spring. And we have a campus-based unit of students who want to be rural teachers. We also started a new teacher support group last spring when COVID struck and a lot of our new teachers were reporting issues. We have a strong communication component. We do newsletters, of course, and typical communications with school districts, but we're also targeting our social media at future students as well as parents. We do lots of newsletters and those kind of things, but we do things like our Why Wednesdays, where we record short snippets of why our kids want to be rural teachers or why they want to be teachers. We let them do Instagram takeovers. We have a bunch of strategies, but the idea is to try to recruit young people to become teachers, which is a big issue in our area. We also have been working on sustainability issues, some campus development efforts, and as well as partnerships with community foundations. So I did that really, really quickly. And I know you probably have questions, but we'll move on to Linda, I think, next. Next slide.
Hello, everyone. I'm Linda Wilson, and I am currently coordinating / directing our program here in Peoria, which is called Peoria Grow Your Own. We have a blended cohort model with our partnership. Our partnership consists of a higher ed partner, which is Bradley University, the union partner, which is Peoria Federation of Teachers, and our district, which is Peoria Public Schools, District 150. The current revamp of the program has been up and operating for almost about 2.5 years. We had a program prior to the budget impasse that Brian kind of talked about earlier. And we're just really grateful that we have the program that's back here in Peoria. The goal of our program is to diversify the pipeline, the education pipeline here. We have low diversity in terms of our teachers, high diversity in terms of our students. So definitely wanting to bridge that gap. With our cohort, because we are a blended cohort, our candidates are at various stages of the continuum of their academic journey. So they may just be graduating from high school, or they may have a bachelor's degree and need initial certification. And they're consisted of paras or local community people that have a passion to become teachers. With our program, I think what really makes our program maybe stronger, probably set out for some programs, but and additionally to what some of the other programs around the country have are the academic, the social, and the financial component. I always call those the 3 essential components. We have the academic component. We have a higher ed liaison that works with our candidates. She helps with tutoring support groups for our content area. She gives them college preparation assistance. Many of our candidates are first generation teacher candidates, and so they kind of need additional assistance to how to navigate the higher ed process. Certification guidance, our state certification requirements change. It almost seems like monthly, especially since COVID. And so that's really essential for a lot of our candidates to have that strong kind of foundation and support with some of the academic things that they may encounter. In terms of social, our candidates are paired with a mentor that provides professional, social, emotional support. Many were past GYO candidates, and so they know the challenges that a lot of our candidates face with home and work and school and trying to balance all of that. We have monthly cohort meetings, and there's a strong culturally responsive teaching strategy kind of focus of that, but we also focus on wellness and social emotional needs and things that are trending in the education system at the time. The financial component is very important because our candidates receive up to a $25,000 tuition assistance, which is also a forgivable in the form of a forgivable loan after 5 years of their committing to work in our local school district. The loan is forgiven. Candidates also, if they have a need, may qualify for childcare or transportation stipends or technology stipends, especially during, or technology assistance. So in the past year, candidates receive computer streams that help with them attending online classes. And emergency assistance. Last year, Grow Your Own Illinois applied for grants and funds, and our candidates were able to receive emergency assistance for food and utilities and other essential things, wraparound things that will help them to be basically successful. What is different from us and a lot of programs that are maybe truly just about the academic focus is that we care about the needs of our candidates. We're committed to supporting our candidates, whatever their life challenges that they may encounter. We care and we want them to be well-rounded individuals that are going to be successful and highly qualified. You can go to the next slide.
I think the strengths of our programs across the board, I think, is the support for our candidates. We all have cohort coordinators, we have people who teach the courses, and we've all been trying to develop a strong culture for non-traditional candidates. Ours are almost all paraprofessionals. One of the strengths we have is that, at least in our case, is that we're kind of, I call it embedded in the cracks of the university, so that when things get stuck at the university here, I can wander my way over to a different office and get it fixed. The cohorts that are run, for example, like Peoria's, really have a strong support model for those students. And I think we're doing a lot of things across the state. It's sometimes hard to explain the differences, but I think the one key thing is the support structures for the students. Next slide.
Some of the challenges, just what was stated earlier with other programs that are across our nation, is inconsistent state funding. Every year, our programs are basically waiting for state appropriations or the state budget or the governor or the legislators to decide what funding will be. And you know, it was consistent from one year to another, but with everything that's been going on with COVID, there definitely could be a shortfall for a lot of our programs. Working with adult learners to rebuild their academic skills and overcome life obstacles. A lot of our candidates are kind of faced with, because they're adult learners, they have families that may encounter illnesses, or they may encounter personal losses, or their car may break down, or just a variety of things that they may not have a support system with. And so, or they may not have ever encountered higher education and kind of learning about that process, and they need a lot of support to overcome those obstacles. The state licensure tests are very challenging to pass. So a couple of years ago, we had a TAP test, which is like a basic skills kind of test for that teacher candidates had to pass before they were able to even go into the College of Education. Well, that test, there's a moratorium on that test right now. However, a lot of our candidates still tend to struggle with the content area test, which is really focused on their area of licensure. And then there's also the Ed TPA, which is basically a competency focused assessment that candidates basically take, build a portfolio kind of work. When they're doing their student teaching, they can be very costly. And then again, it's very challenging in terms of if you've ever kind of dealt with any kind of standardized tests that they, without some additional support, intensive support, sometimes it's challenging to pass. And balancing local program control with statewide mandates. There is a statewide mandate, it's a statewide initiative, and there are rules that local programs have to abide by, but also trying to create that balance for what each community really needs and deems that is best and appropriate for their community based on their local community needs and the needs of the students that are in their community. And then I think this is, one of the kind of ties back into the state funding is this $25,000 cap on tuition assistance. Again, Liza mentioned that I was once a candidate in the program, and I attended a private school. And so if you have candidates that are attending private schools, we know there's a rising cost of tuition every year. And sometimes the $25,000 doesn't go very far, especially if you're if candidates really have to be intentional about seeking out other scholarship opportunities or other type of funding sources that will supplement their tuition assistance that they receive from Grow Your Own Illinois. And I think you can go to the next one. I think that might be the last one though. I'm not going to summarize, but I'll leave it to Ken, but I just want to say thank you all. I've learned a lot today by listening and seeing you all and hearing about your programs, and I'm really interested in working together and learning some of the strategies that we can incorporate into our own program. So thank you.
Yeah, feel free to ask us any questions.
Thanks, everyone. Okay, so now we're going to take a 10-minute break. So come back at 3:32 Eastern, 2:32 Central, 12:32 Pacific, and then Hawaii's 2 hours after that. So 10:32.
42, right?
42. Yeah, duh. 42.
See you at the 42, folks. Thank you.
Thank you for having us here. We're so excited, and I'm here with our team, with our 3 partners. We're Project Reach, retooling educators and paraprofessionals to achieve teacher credentialing. We are from the University of Arkansas, Fayetteville, and I am Diana Gonzalez-Worthen, leading this grant initiative. I'm both the PI and the director, and I'll turn it over to Austin Shader.
Hey everyone, I'm Austin Shader. I'm the Director of Enrollment Services at Northwest Arkansas Community College. So my role is the community college connection point for our REACH students.
Okay. And Ms. Melissa Fink.
Hello, everyone. Greetings from Springdale, Arkansas. My name is Melissa Fink. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Pre-K Elementary Middle School for Springdale. We are district partners with Project Reach to train some of our paraprofessionals to become teachers. And I actually have experience with this program because I'm the former principal of Jones Elementary School here in Springdale, which has a very high ESL, high poverty population, and a couple of our instructional assistants have actually gone through this program.
Thank you, Melissa. So as far as our years in operation and some of our demographics, we started off with a pilot program. Let's see. I'm not sharing my screen. So was I supposed to, there we go. Sorry, thank you. We started with a pilot program in 2014 with 4 bilingual bicultural paraprofessionals. And after the success of that program, 3 out of the 4 are now classroom teachers. We wrote a U.S. Department of Education grant out of Office of English Language Acquisition to scale up, to try to do, to try to increase those numbers. And so in the original grant, we had written that we wanted to prepare 13 bilingual bicultural paraprofessionals to earn their associate's or bachelor's degree and become certified teachers with an ESL endorsement. And we were able to increase that number from 13 to we currently have 31 enrolled. And the way we were able to do that is because our paraprofessionals they do qualify for Pell Grants based on their income. Their income levels are anywhere from $4,642 to $24,000. The majority of them work, over 80% work full-time for the school district. They also have, we have the students are from Mexican descent, that we have from El Salvador, Republic of the Marshall Islands, Venezuela, Cambodia. 94% are female, 6% male. They're all non-traditional students. They all work full-time, and they're all first generation students. Okay, so I'll go to the next slide on the goals. So our goals are to prepare bilingual bicultural paraprofessionals to become kindergarten through 6th grade teachers. In Springdale alone, and Melissa can talk a little bit more about this, but we are partnering with the district because they would like to increase teacher diversity, and they are the school district, the largest in the state, and they serve the largest number of CLD students. Melissa, do you want to add a little bit more to that regarding the district?
Yes, so our district is 45% Caucasian. So the majority of our students are Hispanic. We have a lot of Marshallese students that attend our public schools as well as other ethnicities. We value putting teachers in front of our students and families that share their culture. And we recruit out of universities and colleges, but we've really found that when we can grow our own in our district and work with our instructional assistants to help them become certified teachers, then that's a win-win for everybody, in my opinion. And I know the two that came out of Jones Elementary that are currently finishing the program are dynamite, and I'm sad I'm no longer in a position to get to hire them to work for me, because that was my goal, was to get them back in the building that they came from, because I value them as individuals, and I know that their potential is great. So our school district 110% support this program, and we're excited to partner with them to bring in some diversity into our district.
And then our third goal, because what Melissa was saying, the 45% Caucasian or white students, there are many students, 55%, approximately 55% of the students are English learners. And so it becomes then very critical, not only to prepare bilingual bicultural paraprofessionals in teacher ed, but also so that they can come out with ESOL endorsement coursework under their belt as well. And so one of our goals is that within a year of teaching, they will earn their ESOL endorsement. Now I'll talk a little bit about the GYO design. All of them, the great majority, over 90% work full-time, 10% work part-time, and they are all taking courses as they are working full-time. And so through our partnership with Northwest Arkansas Community College and the University of Arkansas, they can complete their degrees at the community college, and then they transfer over. However, sometimes they're taking classes, they have their foot at both institutions. And so it's flexible enough to where they don't have to wait until they completely finish their degrees to then come over. We have had initially, for those that were recruited and into the program, 7 of them already had Associate of Arts degrees, 2 had bachelor's plus 55% or 17 had some college, and then we had 5 that did not have any college. This is the first time that they're going to college. And so I'm going to turn it over to Austin. He can tell you a little bit more about the community college, because this is where most of them will be starting.
Yeah, so our first group, our first cohort, we brought on campus all as one group and did a big like orientation day and that kind of thing. As the program has progressed and we've gotten kind of students just of all different levels and where they were at, we haven't done a big, large group cohort like that for a while, but we track them. On our end, we track them, we assign them a case manager, so an enrollment advisor, that they follow them from the time of admission all the way through graduation. And it actually, because of the way that the credits transfer back and forth from NWAC to the University of Arkansas, most of the students actually end up with an Associate of Arts and an Associate of Science degree because they end up taking so many classes. We work really closely with the U of A to make sure that, you know, there is a seamless transfer. We just have a new agreement with them on some upper level classes that they can take at the U of A, but still transfer them back to NWAC to do what we call a reverse transfer. As far as, you know, the enrollment standpoint, like I said, from the minute that we get their name from Diana's group, then the folks in my office, my office is in Springdale. And so we keep them all with an advisor and with the case managers in my office in Springdale, because all of them live and work in Springdale. We're right up the street from most of their schools. So we really try to keep them connected with the community and keep them from having to, you know, locate to classes that are farther than what they would like to drive and that kind of thing. With COVID, we haven't, with everyone else, we moved to more of an online format. So it actually has worked better for a lot of them, because a lot of them they work full time, they have families at home, that kind of thing. So I think COVID has worked out better for some of them. You know, but we work, like I said before, we case manage them from the time they come in all the way through graduation. And we do pretty much a seamless transfer with the U of A. There's very few that have a class or something that happens that they can't, that Diana or I won't try to advocate for a course substitution or something like that. But really, they do get an Associate of Arts degree, but we like to try to get them 2 degrees so they get that, they feel like they have a little bit extra with that.
Thank you, Austin. As far as support services, 2 major support services on the next slide. Financial support, we do provide tuition out of the grant. Their tuition fees, textbooks are paid for. Whatever FAFSA does not cover, we pay for. So essentially that's taken care of. The district also has, they also provide support during their internship year. So all of these work they work in the school district. So just to kind of give you an idea, we have instructional assistants. The majority of them are instructional assistants. And then we also have some that are tutors and some that are Hispanic parent or Marshallese liaisons. And so all of them do work in the district. So when they're doing their internship and they're not in the classroom, the district pays for their substitutes so that they can retain their salary. There is no way that they can quit their jobs at all because of that would really impact them financially. So there's no loss of salary during the internship time. And then the other support service is what we call socioculturally mediated academic advising services. And so we have a dedicated academic advisor mentor upon entry into the program, and that's Christine Smart. She is at the university. So Austin was mentioning that they have an advisor at NWAC at the community college. Well, they essentially have 2 advisors. From the moment they start, they have an advisor at the university and they have an advisor at NWAC. And so that advisor stays with them the duration of the program. So they have kind of like double advisors. And then the advisor at U of A, we also have monthly seminars, monthly GYO seminars where we cover a variety of topics. Sometimes when it's time to schedule classes, the advisors from NWAC will come and we meet in the school district. Here lately, it's been Zoom meetings because of COVID, but it allows us to have a plan of action for them to try to be proactive so that they can get through the program. They're in mini cohorts, so not a full cohort like you would think of a traditional cohort of 25 students. We have little mini cohorts, so they sign up for classes together. There might be 3 of them, 5 of them, possibly 6, but now that we have more and more transferring to the university, for example, right now we have 22 taking classes at the University of Arkansas. So some of those classes are solely dedicated to reach students. Otherwise they fill up by the traditional students. So we work very closely with the teacher ed program at the university to ensure that they have classes, that they're taking classes in the evening or after work, and also online. And so they also take intersession classes. Those are generally in the evening. All their classes start after 4:30. And then during the summer, they do not work during the summer. So then their classes are then offered during the day. So they are in school all year round, all fall, spring, and summer. The communication also.
And I'm going to jump in real quick. I'm going to nudge you a little bit, and that goes for the folks coming too, just because I think Iowa and Nebraska are last, and I don't want to hear about how we didn't get to Iowa, get to the last folks, and we want to make sure we move along. So all these slides are going to be shared across the board. So feel free to move along. And then for those of you who come after, if we could just keep moving to make sure that we reach time, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. Okay. And I'm pretty much almost finished. Okay, next slide. So for the strengths of the program, all of the paraprofessionals see this as an opportunity, something that they've wanted to do all their lives, become teachers. We have a very strong 3-way partnership, as I mentioned. We are all of the program is based on an assets-based philosophy using Herrera's CLD biography and Yasso's community cultural wealth. The dedicated academic advisor mentor, serving first-generation students, and then the graduating not only with a teacher certification, but then having that ESOL specialization. Our biggest challenges, and this is our last slide, we do have a couple of students who are DACA students. And so currently in Arkansas, if you are a DACA student, you can be a part of a federal grant. Okay, you can get a degree in elementary ed, but you cannot get a license in Arkansas at this time. So we're hoping to change that during this legislative session, but we're not sure how that's going to work. And then just the continued institutional adaptation and support for equity and inclusion of our future teachers, and then sustainability beyond the grant. So those are our biggest challenges as we move forward.
Thank you so much. Next, we're going to move to the Future Bilingual Teaching Fellows Program in Washington State.
Right. Hi, everybody. My name is Bernard Kuntz. I am with Highline Public Schools, and my partner today is Marcia Riddle-Bully, and she'll talk here in a few minutes. And I am going to set my timer and watch myself so that I don't talk too much. Let me just get that going. Okay. Okay, so just really quick to kind of locate ourselves so you know who we are and where we're at. Highline Public Schools is a school district of about 20,000 kids, and we are just south of the city of Seattle. If you've landed at SeaTac Airport, you've been in Highline. And this program is specific to Highline Public Schools. It's a direct partnership between the school district and Western Washington University. A couple of things just to note before we launch into the slides that I wanted to talk about is a little kind of background on the why. We started our dual language programs in 2008. And at the time, every year hiring was a struggle. And every year I would talk with folks who were kind of interested in doing some sort of alt route program. We kind of had a couple things up and going in Washington at the time. and the gears just were not clicking. There was interest, there were people who wanted to make it happen, but it wasn't clicking together. And then going back about 6 years ago, a great kind of synergy happened of some really cool work at the state level with the legislation, and that kind of translated and connected over to the Professional Educator Standards Board that Alex Manuel on this call leads, who you met earlier. So they did this really cool work to bring together and kind of ignite, if you will, school districts and universities to work together to set up programs. And when telling this story, I always try to really emphasize that sometimes it takes a spark to get something going, and that definitely took a spark to make that happen. So anyways, that's where we came from. And I think I always just try to highlight too, that it came from a place of really a lot of intentional work to, through dual language programming, to attack a lot of institutional racism that's inherent in the system. And what's cool is how that's translated in and reflected in this program now. So we'll click through a couple slides, and then Marcia's going to tell you about some details as well. So why don't we hit that slide? So yeah, go ahead and just hit the next slide there. And so one thing that really was able to help us locally within Highline was a goal to have all our kids graduate bilingual and biliterate. And we're on that path, and that is a local commitment that's really driven us and aligns again with those policies. So a lot of it is about finding those opportunities to leverage policies together. So we can hit that next slide. So in terms of kind of the shape of our program, like I said, we started, this conversation started about 6 years ago with the first grant process, and we launched our first cohort in 2016. Those folks are entering their third year of teaching. And then we had our second cohort graduate this last year, and then our third cohort just started. So that's kind of the shape of the program and where we are with that. Go ahead and hit the next slide. And there they are. And one thing to talk about here is you see the smiles on those faces. And one thing that reminds me to talk about is really the importance of the cohort nature of this program and the tight-knit nature of it. Sometimes in all route programs, I think we talk a lot about flexibility in programs, and that's true to some extent. But also what we've created and what we found is that having a strong cohort really matters. And that actually means that in some way, there's flexibility about how you might get into the program, but once you're in the program, you're in the family and you do what's in that cohort. And that cohort model, they support each other, and it is definitely collective learning. And this is one of those points where I've done a lot of thinking myself as a leader about what that means. And as we think about sometimes that spectrum between individualism and collectivism, one thing that we've seen and learned in this program is how collectivism has emerged as a really key factor in supporting our candidates and learning together. So the next slide. And so obviously, we're trying to build a strong cohort of teachers that are bilingual to teach in our dual language programs and meet that goal. And also, that also aligns with a lot of goals across the state around trying to increase the number of teachers of color. The next slide. And then this quote just helps us to remember that when we can draw teachers from our community, we know how much stronger that is. And when kids see themselves in their educators, they are much more likely to achieve. Hit the next slide. And Marcia, why don't you go ahead and take it from here?
Okay, we're on. Hi, I'm Marcia. So our design it's job embedded teacher preparation, and it's for bilingual paraeducators that are hired into the district. We already talked about the why, and our how is targeted recruitment and this partnership to support candidates so that they complete and retain. Next slides. Our process then is our students apply for bilingual. They come either from the district as bilingual, as paraeducators in the district, or they apply to the district to be a bilingual paraeducator. And they apply to be a bilingual teaching fellow with Highline. And we worked with the union for the paraeducators to actually make a new job description, which is for a bilingual fellow. So it's distinct from a paraeducator, a little bit more pay, a little much broader responsibilities and the expectations of what the fellow will need in order to support their process. Then they apply, if they're accepted by the district, then they apply to us at Western. And then we work with them to get them approved, or if they need things. And then they work and study as bilingual paraeducators for 2 full years. And they graduate with a bachelor's in education and a teaching certificate and a bilingual endorsement. And a K-8 endorsement. Can you go to the next slide? Yeah, so they're full-time students, they're full-time Western education students. Our goal is the quality and rigor has to be equal or greater than that of campus. It's not a lesser than program, it's not a speed program, but I think that people are agreeing that we are producing some amazingly strong dual language teachers. It's, as Bernard said, thank you, Alex. It's partially funded by the state competitive grant that PESB runs. And for us, it's a strong partnership with one district. So what makes it so strong is we have a halftime. Bernard uses the money, the little bit of money that the state gives them to help pay for a halftime teacher on special assignment, whose job it is to mentor first and second year teachers and to mentor these fellows. And what they tell us is that our fellows, when they go into the classroom, are much more like second or third year teachers than they are first year teachers after they graduate. And then we have a field supervisor and mentor from the university. And that TOSA and that mentor work together with the fellows from the very first day that they start, and they're consistent all the way over the 2 years. This last time I had them teach a class together, their first summer, and that has really been helpful in this pandemic because they've never seen each other, the fellows, they've never met face to face, but they feel so connected and they feel like a community. And I think part of that was starting them out with these 2 people co-teaching who also support them all the way through the program. Next slide. You can skip that. Support services, they get some tuition support through the grant. The Teamsters Union that we've worked closely with, and this has really been key to have the Paraeducator Union working with us, so they can also apply for $1,000 to $1,500 grants per year. The district provides a lot of additional funds. The university provides a lot of additional funds in terms of personnel and advising and all those things. The TOSA from the district, the field supervisor I talked about. This is really cool. We started Get Real sessions a couple of years ago, but this year, 2 of the cohort 1 graduates who graduated in 2018 are now my master's students, and I have them working as part-time graduate assistants to support the fellows in Highline. And so that is amazing to have them as a support who follow up and not only help the students that are currently in the program, but they can also talk to people who are interested in the program. And they both are women who are dual language learners or are dual language themselves, who are dual language teachers, and who both have families and little kids. So they're really a great emotional support because this is a very rigorous program. We have support staff at the university that help navigate. It's a cohort model. We schedule our classes around the work time. And because we work with one district, we're really able to focus on the curricular and equity goals that we share with Highline. And that's very exciting. And then we also have monthly mentor meetings, and those are co-facilitated by that TOSA and my university field supervisor, and the graduate assistants and I help out with that. And then the HR mentors, directors, fellows also attend that. And the mentors get paid service hours plus clock hours in order to attend. And that is a really powerful piece. So sometimes it's focused on mentoring strategies, sometimes it's focused on nuts and bolts things, but it is really a strong piece. Next slide. Next slide. That's at one of our mentoring meetings where we also build in time in the mentoring meeting always for the mentor and the fellow to work together to do some planning, because sometimes they just don't get enough planning time during the week. They're also paired with the same mentor for 2 years. So when they start out as a bilingual fellow, they have one teacher, one who has been identified, who is their mentor over the entire 2 years. And that's so that we can really build that strong relationship, and it's so that they can start they can get their field experiences all throughout those 2 years and within their bilingual teaching position. Next slide. So some strengths, I think I already talked about that. Our students feel incredibly supported. They only have to talk to either a grad assistant, the university, one of the university people, one of our field supervisors, or our TOSA, or anyone else. And that one person will kind of initiate all hands on deck in order to support the person. We share that commitment to disrupting inequities. And it's more than just words. I've tried working this with other districts, and there's a lot of words, but there's not as much feet to the ground. And Bernard really and Highline really are not, they don't not only say, they walk the word. So they are committed to building dual language and to disrupting inequities. And so it's fabulous to partner with one district. Our instructors come from both the district and the university, and the university faculty support the district instructors so that it's aligned to the goals as a university, although the delivery is different and sometimes the content is different since we're focused on Highline in Highline. But the university faculty share Canvas resources, and it's a fabulous relationship because the teachers in the TOSAs in Highline are incredibly talented, and they share back to the university faculty. So we see changes in the courses on campus from what we're getting from the instructors in Highline. At the same time, they're getting that support from faculty about how to teach classes and all of that. Let's see, go ahead and go. Next slide, which I think is our last. So challenges for us, Alex, you'll know this. We would really like predictable funding. It's hard for us because we have to write a grant every 2 years, and we have to wait till it's approved before we can really heavily recruit, and then we go crazy recruiting. It's hard for us to get, especially students who aren't necessarily thinking of a route to become a teacher, to start working toward that when we can't guarantee them that there's going to be funding to help support them as they go. COVID's been a big stressor, too much Zoom. We prefer, because all our candidates are dual language and almost all of them are, their first language is not English. We prefer to meet in person. We find it just a stronger support for bilingual learners in particular, and also just the community building. But I say that, but on the other hand, it's working really well right now. And we're all on Zoom. I talked about the past challenges. Our support funds often go to remediating things that the students didn't get either in their AA or high school. Math in particular, we put a lot of money and support around that. And the challenge is it costs to do it well. To really do it well, it costs for so many different things. It takes much more time to admit a student. They often have international transcripts. We have to go through all the loops at the university to get past that. And it just takes a lot of people working with the candidates to help them be ready to go. Next slide. I don't even know if I have a next slide. So there's our fellows in class. Go ahead to the next one. There's the governor visiting the fellows. Go to the next one. I just threw some pictures in there because I like those. These are our fellows developing a bilingual. All of our fellows are also trained in GLAD and guided language acquisition design. And here they're developing a bilingual, I think it's a narrative input chart or a pictorial, I'm not sure. And go ahead and go to the next one. And they taught in the summer school in their first summer. There's one of our fellows teaching. Next one, and that's it. That was really fast. So any questions, just throw them in the chat, and Bernard or I would be happy to talk the nuts and bolts of a district university partnership.
Thank you, Marcia and Bernard. We're actually gonna skip ahead to Teach Waterloo because our other presenter had to step away, but should be back. So Teach Waterloo.
So good afternoon, everybody. I'm Kingsley Botchway II. I'm the Chief Officer of Human Resources and Equity for Waterloo Schools. I'm excited to talk to you today about the Teach Waterloo program, just because it's been somewhat of a pass from a really informative mentor and predecessor for me, and I've been able to carry the baby. I think I've done really well with with it, with the team and you and I and support. Next slide. So one of the things that we pride ourselves on with Teach Waterloo program is that it's impacting our district community in a different way. And so we've talked about how this in particular is a focus on how do we get additional Black educators into the classroom, but how this impacts our Black educators by really addressing Black wealth in the community, home ownership and some other things with the ability for, especially in the blue collar town that we live in, the ability to make a little bit more money, but also impact the community in a different way. Next slide. So Teach Waterloo is an agreement between the University of Northern Iowa and the Waterloo Community School District, where we are dedicated to increasing the number of minority teachers in the classroom. The initiative is grant funded by the R.J. McElroy Trust in the area. We have, and I'll talk about it a little bit later on as well, we have our own expenses that we incur, but the greater level of the grant comes from R.J. McElroy Trust, which funds you and I with the first and second core of the program. Next slide. So the initiative first launched within literally the first half of the year I got here. I basically was a passing of the guard from my initial predecessor, as I talked about before. 15 fellows were selected and put into the program. And we, unfortunately, based on some of the trials and tribulations that got through the program, we only ended up with now 3 reaching the student teachers aspect of the program. And so we've been combing through data to look through, what happened, what occurred. We've also invited some individuals back to complete the program. Really key barrier for us was the Praxis 1. That was something that really stopped a lot of our minority students from entering into the program. You need the Praxis 1 to enter into the College of Education program. Luckily, we worked with state legislators over the last year, and they actually removed that barrier. And so it's been a transformative program, not only for the fact of wanting to get increasing minority teachers, but the need has been clearly apparent within our legislators, and they've really taken a huge step in supporting us and removing barriers that have been problematic. Currently, we have 9 fellows, and I don't know if we're sharing the slides, but there's a video that people can look at and see kind of the overall program and all the good that it's doing. Next slide. So fellows basically are recommended based on having an AA degree. They need to complete 60 hours over 2.5 years, and then they are eligible for an elementary endorsement. And so this is only for elementary education teachers. Next slide. So for us, the barriers, because we are pulling from our dedicated workforce, we're pulling from our support staff. Either we pulled from our paraeducators, we pulled from our interpreters, we pulled from our our at-risk coordinators, anybody that we felt like, hey, had an interest in teaching, and we'd seen some dedicated work and focus in the community to that extent. But we lose them. We lose them for a significant amount of time. And I think that's the part where I kind of alluded to, the district pays a significant amount of resources. And so we basically, in order to complete this program, we pay for their time. So that was something that I just decided that we had to do just from a community aspect. So while they're taking courses, they still get full-time benefits and full-time pay, which is huge in this community for them to have. In particular, it's really been impactful from a student teaching standpoint because they have not participated, they're not able to work at all. And we're still paying, again, that full-time pay and full-time benefits. And that's just a cost that the district incurs. It helps that I oversee our CFO and our finances as well, just to make sure that all adds up at the end of the day and everything works well. But it's been key for me to be in that chief officer, associate superintendent role, just to push things through, where in the past, I've tried to do something similar at the director level in another school district, it just didn't work as well. So this has been it's been some key findings from that perspective. Unseen personal barriers, again, from the 15 down to the 3, there were a lot of different issues. There were some health issues. There were just some family issues. There were a number of issues that, as I hear other people talk about the barriers that they try to overcome and adding additional support from a mental health standpoint, those are things that we're continuing to look at as well. we've seen some changes in the program. And then initially there was inflexible programmatic structures where primarily the classes were during the workday. Now we're offering, or now UNI is offering Saturdays, they're offering after school. There's a variety of different options, especially as we move into the online setting, that's really helped the class or the class and the cohorts feel better about their placement in this program. Next slide. And lastly is the benefits. And I wanted to leave that, I think, for the last slide, just because just excited about what it means. There's a clear focus on increasing teacher diversity. Again, from my perspective and in my position, that's what we're all about. So we focus on that. We make that, we're unashamed at our endeavor in that particular way. We provide, there is a wraparound support. We had more support initially in the program, and with some of the challenges, we've made some changes, but it used to be you and I provided a lot more support on their end. Now we've tried to provide more support as they tried to streamline their program to ensure the program continues. It's cohort based. We have a mentor that's a Black educator that we have on our team as well to help provide mentorship and answer questions. Again, really trying to focus on how do we ensure that they know what it's like to be a teacher. They're really thinking about that from that perspective. And then again, it's 100% free for our staff. We pay for books, we pay for their salary, we pay for the test. We really try to take out money from the equation because we know that can be a huge stressor, especially during this pandemic. Next slide. And that's it. So glad to hear some questions in the chat and again, learn from others. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I have to admit a personal connection. I grew up in Cedar Falls, which is the town next to Waterloo, and my mom was a faculty member at UNI for 12 years in their School of Education. So it's exciting to see this work happening in my own local community. So next, we're actually going to go back. We just have to refresh the slides and have Conrad Gist share with us about the CTED program in Houston, at the University of Houston. And then we'll come back and end with the Nebraska program.
Okay. Oh, there we go. All right. Okay, perfect. So thank you. Sorry, I was delayed in coming back. I just want to say, in reentering the space, I'm really excited to be part of this network and really grateful for the work that Amaya and Elena are leading. What I'm going to be presenting and talking about today is actually an emerging Grow Your Own program. And it's really framed from the place of thinking about research practice partnerships. And we've been talking about it as a type of community teacher equity development program. And so this is out of the University of Houston. That's what I think this guideline is supposed to give a sense of that. And so I'm just going to be giving an opening overview, probably not as detailed as others, because we're just starting to launch this program. So you can advance to the next slide, I believe. Okay. So CTED, Community Teacher Equity Development Program, organizes a type of research practice partnership. And so if you look on the far left side, you'll see the University of Houston, National Center of Research on Educator Diversity as the R part of the work. And then we're looking to establish a research practice partnership on the P side with 3 different Greater Houston school districts. So we have Houston ISD, Aldine ISD, and Alief ISD. And kind of the focus of our research practice partnership is this community teacher equity development program. Next slide. And then just kind of as a little bit of a caveat, part of the reason we decided to kind of launch this work is connected to what we're calling the National Center for Research on Educator Diversity. And we were really trying to think about how do we develop these types of grow your own programs to really make sure that they're research based and that they're kind of driven by the current research that we know around educator diversity. So the center, you can advance to the next slide. The center has 3 core goals. First is to establish a knowledge base. So the center will serve as an institutional home for the generation of knowledge grounded in evidence-based outcomes and subsequent educator diversity knowledge projects that will be published. 2, the goal is to disseminate the knowledge base, which is to facilitate the dissemination of research and practitioner scholarship across a wide range of researchers, scholars, and practitioners. And 3, which is really what I think brings us to the conversation today, is to apply the knowledge base, which is thinking about how the center can serve as an organizing hub for innovative research practice partnerships committed to educator diversity. And so the next slide is about applying this knowledge base, right? So one of the things that we thought we would do connected to the center, and I offer that framing because that's really kind of how we came up with this idea to do a research practice partnership dedicated to grow your own work, is we thought that we would think about applying the knowledge base first in the local context. So thinking a little bit about how do you develop an RPP dedicated to educator diversity and have like a kind of a pilot site. The broader vision is think about how we would do that work at a national level. And so what I'm going to briefly talk to you guys about today is really just our initial thinking around what that would look like from a grow your own perspective. So next slide. And so right now, and you can see how this is the kind of the politics of thinking about how we frame this program. We talked about it as an alternative, grow your own paraeducator to teacher residency pathway leading to certification. So I think we have like all the ed prep models in that portion of the work. And it's really because, this is a partnership. I showed you that opening visual and trying to think about how we bring different partners to the table to buy into this work. But the goal, and this is the heart of it, really is to create safe spaces for teachers of color and Indigenous teachers to grow and foster competencies that address issues of inequity, race and racism in their classrooms and schools. To offer psychosocial emotional supports tailored to the needs of teachers of color and Indigenous teachers working in under-resourced schools. To create space to cultivate coping and resilience strategies in the face of professional challenges and setbacks. And then lastly, to foster communities of practice among novice teachers of color and Indigenous teachers through responsive and tailored co-teaching and mentorship support. And I think what's key from the very beginning is that we're centering, like our whole program design is about really addressing the needs and strengths of BIPOC educators. Like that's kind of fundamental to our work, and thinking about how that design, so kind of thinking about a research-based program, how this design is really informed by what we know about supporting teachers of color and Indigenous teachers. Next slide. And so kind of our goal, and this is actually something, and I'll give the timeline in a little bit, but basically these are the commitments that we came up with across these 3 different districts right now in terms of who we will actually recruit. So we'll recruit paraeducators of color and Indigenous paraeducators who are committed to anti-racist practices and advancing educational justice for marginalized schools. So part of that is thinking about what does it look like to have a selection protocol that makes sure that we bring in folks who already have those types of commitments from the very beginning. So our model is very much about not necessarily developing people into what they don't have related to kind of a critical consciousness, but really thinking about how do we tap people who come in with that kind of perspective early on. And so that's really the first point. The second point is that we have them work in places where other people don't want to show up, essentially. And so we want folks who are committed to serve and to lead in places that are difficult for a lot of people. The same point applies for the third one in terms of working in low-income socioeconomic status communities. And then finally, that this is going to be, an alternative certification program in shortage areas. So one of the things that we've been thinking about in meeting with the districts is, we're not just developing a paraeducator program, just out of the sky, we have these ideas, but we want to make sure that the paraeducators that we prepare are actually matched with the content areas that the district actually needs. So right now at the University of Houston with this program, we're thinking specifically about preparing bilingual educators, special ed educators, and mathematics educators. Next slide. And so we're really kind of thinking about this program at 3 different levels. So the first level is the alternative certification part, which is what we're really going to implement immediately, which is pairs of bachelor's degrees. So this is our alternative grow your own paraeducator to teacher pathway. And these are folks that will be able to get in quickly to begin teaching. The second level is being able to recruit pairs with some college coursework. So for that aspect of the model, what we're looking to design is a 15-month residency program at UH, where we recruit folks across our 3 different districts who have some college and will be able to complete the program in a 15-month time period. And the third level, which we're not actually going to be implementing this year, is thinking about a school support level. So that's where we kind of move beyond just thinking about pairs, but thinking about support staff that we might actually bring through a type of residency program. And then our inaugural class, it's exciting to be connected to a meeting where people are doing this work, because it's like, we're actually going to be doing this. This is happening. Our inaugural class is going to be accepted this year, and we will begin in June 2021. The first cohort, we're going to accept 15 paraeducators, and 10 will be the alt-cert folks. So they'll be at Aldine and Alief, and the other 5 will be at Houston ISD, and that will be the residency program where we bring people through a 15-month clip. And I think I just have one more slide, just to give a sense in terms of timeline, just to let you know this is vision building, and why I'm grateful to be part of this network right now. We started kind of recruiting district partners last summer, thinking about how do we develop a vision for this work? What are some funding opportunities that we may have available to be able to move this work to the next level? So that was June through August of last year. Then this past fall, we've been thinking a little bit about how do we develop this RPP initiated by cultivating strong relationships, right? And so we spent 2 months kind of thinking through that process, then another 2 months, kind of the end of November, beginning of this year, beginning to think about what's our theory of action around this work? How do we develop a radical reimagination of what it means to prepare paraeducators of color and Indigenous paraeducators? And that's where we are, like, right now in the work. And then the final stage, which will be coming up in the next month or so, is actually implementing the vision. We spend a lot of time thinking about how to build it, but then we actually have to make it work. So I wanted to end with that slide just to kind of give you a sense of the vision and where we are in the process. It's a RPP work because we're working very, very closely with the district to build this out. So we kind of have the research base and our kind of critical conceptual lens that we're bringing to this work, but we're very much working hand in hand with the district to kind of build this out. So we'll have more to share in the months to come. That's all I have for today.
Thank you, Conra. And she would never say this about herself, but we're lucky to have Conra in our group. She is the topmost scholar on Grow Your Own programs. And so we will all get to learn a lot from her as well. And so we are going to end today with the Indigenous Roots program in Nebraska.
Yes, hi. I'm Nancy Ingen-Wadeen, and I'm the project director of the Indigenous Roots Teacher Education Program. And I don't know if you heard, but we had 2, maybe 3 snow days this week. And so I think 2 of our practitioners who were going to show up today are not here. Nephthys Husto and Vida Stabler both work in schools, our partner schools. And so I think they're probably trying to get caught up because literally we had snow days. Lincoln, Nebraska had 15.5 inches. But anyway, Amy LaPointe is here. And Amy, do you want to introduce yourself? You can go on to the next slide too.
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. Amy LaPointe, I'm the education director from the Winnebago tribe of Nebraska and a graduate of the Roots program.
Yes, we call it the Roots program. So Vida Stabler is the director of the Omaha Nation Language and Culture Center. She's at the Omaha Nation School in Macy. Amy's in Winnebago. And Nephthys is in Niobrara in the Santee Dakota tribe of Nebraska. So we kind of represent, you'll see a map here in a little bit, a wide diversity of Nebraska. Next slide. So this grant represents, or this program represents it serves some critical needs. There's an underrepresentation of Native teachers in Nebraska schools. It's not just Nebraska, it's across the nation. And even in the high density schools, such as rural reservation communities, which are some of the target schools in this program. 7 out of 100 Native American kindergartners earns a bachelor's degree, compared to 34 out of every 100 white kindergartners. This is from the Education Trust. So the program serves critical needs. Next slide. We did some research on a couple of grants we wrote, and we were looking at the percentage of free and reduced lunch, but we were also looking at the number of Native teachers in each of our Nebraska Native school districts. And in 1991, when this project first started, there was one Native teacher at the Omaha Nation School and one Native teacher in Santee. We figured out who they were when we met to prepare this presentation. We're now at a different place. This program is 20 years old. We celebrated our 20th anniversary last year. Next slide. Overarching goals. So one of our main goals is really to improve the educational outcomes for the Native students in Nebraska. Natives, that's the main goal. We're also trying to develop strong educational programs in the urban and rural communities and build capacity within the Native American schools and communities. And then we're doing this by certifying Native American teachers to work in predominantly Native American schools and communities. Next slide. So everybody's talked, I had a real affinity with Hawaii, who said partnerships are the way, and they really are. We partner with Little Priest Tribal College in Winnebago and with Amy with the Winnebago tribe. We partner with Nebraska Indian Community College. So colleges, the Department of Ed, our Native American school districts are our partners. And then we also now have new partners in Omaha and Lincoln. And we're working with the school districts primarily. So next slide. And here, just to get a map of a sense of, right now we're probably serving primarily Eastern Nebraska. We'd like to reach out beyond that, but partly the program is constraining. But we really have had, you'll see what's so fun is to be able to, 20 years down the road, to be able to work with your partner like Amy as a colleague in moving Indian education ahead in Nebraska. That's the benefit. So anyway, next slide. So we've gotten funding all along, and there is this kind of move ahead, prepare, madly apply. But the funding is what supported us, and the initial funding was through the Office of English Language Acquisition. And then since then, we've received support through the Office of Indian Education in their professional development grant program. And we've gotten a significant amount of funding since 1999. Next slide. Okay, this is really like the program goals and activities. So we collaborate with area community college to offer general ed courses. We recruit students, including paraprofessionals who are working in the schools. We implement program services. We develop a teacher mentor program. We have site mentors in each school. The learning experiences are developed and taught in the communities where the students live. We provide ongoing support for the students. You'll see a list of that support. And the coursework is scheduled. It's a hybrid, but we do require that the faculty visit the students in their schools and communities. It's a requirement. Next slide. So we do use field-based online learning. Really, this was a whole big, long effort to switch over probably 15 years ago to online, or 15 years ago, we were using satellite TVs, but we now are really online. And when COVID hit, we were already there. So next slide. just to show you, we still do field work. So this is one of the art methods classes that was taught probably this was early on, but they did some work where the students actually went out and took some clay out of the ground. They said a prayer for it. They used all the cultural traditions and they brought it in and they made clay and clay pots. So it was one of the art methods classes. Next slide. So the program requirements for students, they've got to complete all the UNL coursework. They earn a bachelor's degree or initial certification in elementary ed K-8. They do get an ELL or ESL in concentration. They finish 3 or 4 practicum students teaching semesters as paraprofessionals in the schools where they're placed. They do have to pass the Praxis 1 and Praxis 2 in Nebraska. Their coursework and portfolio integrates culturally relevant and language-based approaches. And at the end, there's a 2-year induction period where we work with and follow the students after they've been placed. Next slide. So Amy, jump in here. I know you have a lot to say about some of the student support. I don't know if you want to, say what you got as a result of being a student in the program.
Yeah, I think just the access to the materials, the classes, being able to be coming to us instead of us traveling down to Lincoln, which is a 2-hour drive from where I'm at. Yes, and being able to work with a group of, at the same time, a group of students. We supported one another, still very close with the ones that were in the program at the time. And I love that they're, teaching in schools and doing big things too. So yeah, just I think that support piece, being able to conversate with somebody that's going through the same thing as you are at that time I loved it.
The grant pays a monthly stipend for full-time students. I think most of our students wouldn't be able to make it without the monthly stipend. Like many of your other programs, it covers the tuition and fees. It covers the cost of textbooks and classroom supplies. It covers the cost of criminal history fees and all the other fees that are needed.
And Nancy, I can chime in there a little bit.
Oh,
Hi,
Nephthys, you're here.
I'm Nephthys Husto, and I am here out of I teach out of Niobrara, Nebraska, and I teach 3rd grade and 3rd through 5th social studies. And I went through I work with UNL now as a site mentor for students that are currently going through the program, but I went through the program myself. I had worked in beef packing plants for several years. And was just tired of having that kind of work and wanted to go back to college. But I had 3 kids already, but no excuse there, but I had 3 kids already. I lived in rural, on the reservation here in Santee, Nebraska, and didn't have the resources I needed. And it was really tough. I tried to drive an hour and a half to Wayne State College to go to college, and I had problems with daycare and, my kids being sick, and it was just a real struggle. So when I got into this career, or the Indigenous Roots program, it was Career Ladder at the time, it was a great program for me and for my family, because like she has here, I got the stipend every month. It covered all of my tuition. So I ended up graduating completely debt-free. I didn't take out any loans because I just lived off of what I got, and I worked part-time at the school. So I got the experience in school being a para and in our school in Santee. And the other good thing about the program is that a lot of our classes are focused towards teaching Native students, because that is our ultimate goal, is to get more Native teachers to teach our Native students. So it was great for my family because I didn't have to leave anywhere. I got to be right around home. I mean, sometimes my kids sat out. I was distance learning a lot. So sometimes my kids sat in the hallway, right outside my room while I was in class. And and that just all these little things helped me succeed. If I was struggling, the program funded a tutor. So I was able to get tutoring. There was occasions when they would help with childcare. Sometimes we had to travel for class, so they would provide lodging for me, and then I could pay and then pay for me to have somebody come along to watch my kids while I was in class. So really, I mean, it seems like a program is like above and beyond in the things that you can't fail if you really want to graduate, because they have so many resources available for you. And then also just the support mentally, because trying to juggle family and college, and Nancy was my person there that anytime I had problems or times I felt like I couldn't do it and I was going to quit, I always had somebody in my corner to encourage me. So I mean, it's just a great program, and it is a wonderful way for Native American people to get their degree in order to work with our own population of students.
Yeah, and thank you, Nephthys. Nephthys is, as I said earlier, she's a site mentor in Niobrara and Santee, and we have one site mentor in each school, and you can go on to the next slide. This tells more about the university support. We support career services, and we have a technology center. We have a variety of supports that are available to the students. So let's go on to the next slide. So far we've had 53 graduates with bachelor's degrees or initial certification. 9 have earned master's, additional certification, or educational administration. And we're looking at educational administration. And this picture here is a picture of 2 graduates and their families. So we have quite a network of families in Nebraska of graduates. Next slide. I'm just showing you this, that we track, that we work with the students we help get them placed, and also we do induction services for 2 years after they're placed in the schools or in the educational settings. And this is kind of their locations where they are now. So we don't need to go through every detail of that. Next slide. Strengths. Both Nephthys and Amy have said this. The program serves the students in the communities where the students live. We have site mentors there. The faculty travel there. We have community review teams who review all the applications that are in each community. So that's a strength. The intentional partnerships, I have an affinity with the Hawaii group because we really do need the partnerships. The program does focus on the individual needs of students. Each student is different, so I always say it's kind of bird by bird. The emphasis is on American Indian language and culture, and we work with the students to help develop their skills in teaching that. Biggest challenge is the high involvement and support it takes makes it difficult to serve large cohorts. That's hard for us. And again, others have said the state and institutional requirements can be limiting. We do have issues with the Praxis 1 and Praxis 2. And it's so important, and we do deal with this on a daily basis of building everyone's understanding and skills to learn to serve as advocates. And next slide. Next slide. Thank you all.